I now recognize Representative Strong for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to first thank our witnesses for being here today for their contributions to this critical discussion. Mr. Cuccinelli, according to the Department of Homeland Security, nonprofit organizations occasionally serve as sponsors on parole applications. How frequently do nonprofit organizations serve in this role, and what are the implications of their involvement?
I don't have exact numbers, but it is very common. They also do it, it isn't a one-off. So you have organizations that are being sponsors for large numbers of people. And I would just point out, this concept of sponsorship is as old as the American immigration system, but the fact of the matter is, in our adult lifetimes, sponsors have not, repeat, not, been held accountable to what are the supposed requirements of sponsors. And that has just never happened under any administration. So it's easy for the nonprofits or any individual to do this. We have individuals sponsoring scores of people as well, dozens, I should say, that'd be the high end, which they could never financially fulfill the obligations if they were called on to do so for everyone they're sponsoring. So this whole system is broken, and thus it's very easy for a nonprofit to step in there as one part of its agenda to bring larger numbers of folks into the U.S.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that this administration is placing national security first and is taking the necessary actions to restore integrity and accountability to our immigration system. Mr. Cuccinelli, can you discuss the role that state and local law enforcement play in supporting ICE with parole removal orders, as well as any challenges that they see?
So first of all, this is all more work for all of them to do if they're willing to do it. Making the news all the time are the states and localities that refuse to cooperate with ICE, and under the 10th Amendment, the federal government can't simply demand local or state cooperation. Now, as your annual budget comes up September 30th, you can write it into the law. This was litigated in the first Trump administration, and without specific budget requirements tying cooperation to the cutting off of funding, then the federal government doesn't have a tool to compel this cooperation. For those that do cooperate, we famously we're seeing it in Florida, and we can go all around the country at the localities in many of your states that are cooperating. Yes, it's easier, believe it or not, to target the criminals because they pop onto your radar. They pop onto your radar. They may be 2.5%, 3%, 4%, 5% of the total population. And I've heard complaints that they're only 30% of those being deported. I would point out that they're 10 times their proportion in the population of illegal aliens being focused on. So that security and safety element is a priority numerically and proportionally.
Thank you. Switching gears a little bit, Mr. Camarota, you and I both know that America deserves an immigration system that prioritizes their interest in public safety above all else. Can you further expand on the fiscal burdens placed on American taxpayers when parolees begin receiving welfare benefits? And are there types of financial benefits that parolees qualify for that other illegal aliens do not?
Yeah, so especially with that qualified alien provision that now apparently, as I read the big beautiful bill, is not going to apply. But the thing you have to keep in mind is that probably played some role, but what's driving the high use of public services is the low educational attainment of parolees and their low income, the presence of U.S.-born children, which isn't changing with the law, the fact that some states give them benefits, some programs are allowed to be used, like WIC and free school lunch and emergency Medicaid and Medicaid for pregnant women. So there are these other factors. In other words, if you had to, the bottom line is, people who come to America, even those who work, and as I point out, they have relatively high rates of work, if they have very modest levels of education, they make extensive use of the social safety net. And it's not because they're lazy, it's not because they all came to get welfare, it's just the reality of modern America. You have to be very selective or you're going to get kicked in the teeth in fiscal costs. That's just how it is when it comes to immigration.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
During a recent hearing, Representative Dale Strong, Republican Alabama, questioned witnesses on the role of nonprofits and the financial strain parolees may place on taxpayers. Ken Cuccinelli explained that nonprofit organizations frequently serve as sponsors on parole applications, often supporting large numbers of people. He pointed out that while the idea of sponsorship has always been part of the U.S. immigration system, sponsors, whether nonprofits or individuals, are almost never held accountable for the financial and legal obligations tied to their role. Some individuals, he noted, sponsor dozens of people despite lacking the means to fulfill those responsibilities, which makes the system easy to exploit for organizations aiming to bring more migrants into the country. Cuccinelli also spoke about state and local law enforcement's cooperation with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. While some jurisdictions actively support federal authorities, others refuse to participate, citing the 10th Amendment. He noted that unless Congress explicitly ties federal funding to local cooperation, the government cannot compel state or local authorities to assist with ICE removal efforts. Representative Strong then shifted the focus to the fiscal side of immigration and asked Stephen Camarota, Director of Research at the Center for Immigration Studies, about the public benefits received by parolees. Camarota explained that parolees often qualify for programs such as WIC, free school lunches, emergency Medicaid, and Medicaid for pregnant women. He emphasized that the high use of public services is driven largely by the low educational attainment and modest incomes of many parolees, along with the presence of U.S.-born children, rather than laziness or an intent to exploit welfare programs. According to Camarota, even though many parolees work, their limited education and low earnings inevitably lead to extensive reliance on social safety nets. He warned that without being selective in immigration policies, the U.S. faces significant fiscal costs connected to the modern welfare system.